Have you ever felt exhausted trying to make someone understand you, only to realize they never really listened in the first place? You explained your heart, your truth, your intentions, again and again, hoping that this time they'd see you clearly. But instead, you were met with blank eyes, shallow words, or silent judgment, and slowly, something inside you broke. You started questioning yourself, wondering if maybe you were the problem. But here's the truth: they were never listening, not because your message wasn't clear, but because they were trapped in their own illusion. You see, some people don't see reality as it is. They see it as their fear allows. Their minds are filled with assumptions, projections, and false beliefs. They don't want to understand you. They want to protect their illusion of who they think you are. So no matter how many times you explain, they'll twist your words until they fit their story. And the more you try to defend yourself, the more you lose your peace. Because explaining yourself to someone trapped in illusion is like talking to a mirror that only reflects their own confusion. You're not having a conversation. You're feeding a cycle that drains your soul. You were not born to convince the blind to see your light. You were born to shine regardless of who recognizes it. Every minute you spend justifying your truth is a minute stolen from your purpose. The world doesn't need more people begging to be understood. It needs people strong enough to walk in truth, even when misunderstood. That is where real power begins, not in the noise of explanation, but in the silence of self-acceptance. Think about how much energy you've wasted trying to prove your worth to people who never intended to value it. Think about the nights you stayed awake, replaying conversations, trying to find better words, clearer reasons, softer tones. You thought maybe if you explained differently, they'd finally see your heart. But they couldn't, because they weren't listening with their heart. They were listening with their ego. An ego doesn't want truth. It wants control. It wants to be right, even if that means keeping you small. But your peace matters more than their perception. Your growth matters more than their comfort. The moment you stop explaining yourself, you reclaim your energy. You break free from the invisible chains of validation. You begin to realize that not everyone deserves access to your truth. Some people are not ready for your depth. Some minds cannot handle your clarity. And that's not your fault. It's their limitation. When you finally stop trying to be understood, you step into a rare kind of freedom, a peace that comes from knowing you owe no one an explanation for your growth, your boundaries, or your healing. The ones meant to walk with you will understand without words. The rest will misunderstand no matter what you say, and that's okay, because their opinion doesn't define your reality. Your self-awareness does. So breathe, stop explaining, stop defending. You don't need to shrink to fit their illusion. Stand tall in your truth, and let silence be your answer. Because silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's strength that doesn't need to prove itself. The people who truly see you won't need you to explain who you are. They'll feel it, they'll know it. And when you learn to value that peace more than approval, life begins to transform. Stay, because by the end of this message, you'll learn how to stop chasing understanding and start living in unshakable inner peace. When you begin to understand how perception works, everything changes. You stop feeling frustrated by misunderstanding because you finally see that most people aren't reacting to you, they're reacting to their own reflection. Human beings don't see truth, they see through filters built from fear, pain, and memory. Every belief they've formed, every judgment they hold, acts like a lens shaping how they interpret reality. And when that lens is dirty with illusion, no matter how clearly you speak, your truth will always appear distorted in their eyes. This is not about you. It's about the walls inside their mind. People trapped in illusion cannot see clearly because clarity threatens the identity they've built around their beliefs. If they admit you're right, they'd have to question their entire worldview. That's why they resist. That's why they twist your words, misread your silence, and project their fears onto you. They're not fighting you. They're fighting themselves. And your endless explanations only give them more ammunition to reinforce their illusion. The greatest mistake you can make is assuming that logic or kindness can open a closed mind. It cannot. The mind only opens when the heart is ready, and you cannot force readiness through explanation. You can only embody it through peace. That is emotional mastery. That is power rooted in awareness. When you understand that perception is shaped by consciousness, you stop taking things personally. You stop reacting. You begin observing. You rise above. Psychologists call this projection, and it's one of the most powerful insights you can ever learn about human behavior. People project their inner world onto others. If they live with fear, they'll assume you're a threat. If they live with guilt, they'll accuse you of wrong intentions. If they live with insecurity, they'll see confidence as arrogance. They don't see you, they see their wounds wearing your face. So when you explain yourself to them, you're not correcting misunderstanding, you're talking to a mirror reflecting their pain. True peace begins when you stop engaging with projection and start protecting your energy. You don't have to fight illusions. You simply step out of them. You stop feeding the cycle with reaction and explanation. You let silence reveal what words never could, because silence doesn't argue. It reveals truth through time. Eventually, those trapped in illusion will see what you meant, not because you convinced them, but because reality will. That's the law of clarity. It always rises to the surface once the noise fades. There's freedom in realizing you don't have to control how others see you. What matters is how you see yourself. When your inner perception becomes clear, external misperceptions lose power. You begin to live from alignment, not approval, from calm, not chaos. And the less you chase understanding, the more peace flows into your life. So breathe into this truth. Your job is not to make everyone understand your heart. Your job is to keep your heart pure, even when others can't see it. You are not here to win arguments. You are here to evolve. Every time you choose silence over defense, you rise a little higher. Every time you stop chasing validation, you reclaim your energy. And one day, you'll look back and realize you never needed them to understand you. You just needed to understand yourself. That's when illusion loses its power, and truth becomes your quiet, unshakable strength. There is a sacred power in silence that few ever learn to master. It's the kind of silence that doesn't come from fear or defeat, but from deep understanding. The kind that says, I no longer need to prove what I already know. When you reach that point, you stop explaining, and you start embodying. You stop seeking peace through words, and you find it within presence. Because silence isn't emptiness, it's space. And in that space, truth has room to breathe. When you no longer rush to explain yourself, you begin to feel a shift. The chaos inside starts to settle. You realize that silence is not the absence of communication, it's the highest form of it. It tells the world, I am no longer controlled by misunderstanding. Silence carries strength that no argument can touch. It shows emotional maturity, the ability to stay calm while others try to provoke reaction. It's in that calm that your true power is revealed. People who thrive on illusion feed off reaction. They want you defensive, desperate, and drained because that keeps you inside their reality. But when you meet their confusion with silence, it starves the illusion. It takes away their control. The energy they once used to manipulate your peace now falls flat. And as you rise above their noise, something beautiful happens. You begin to see how much of your life was wasted explaining yourself to those who never deserved that depth. Detachment becomes your superpower. Not coldness, not indifference, but clarity. You start to see the difference between connection and attachment. Connection flows naturally and gives you peace. Attachment demands constant explanation, reassurance, and struggle. One nurtures your soul, the other drains it. Detachment teaches you that love doesn't mean chasing understanding. It means standing in your truth without needing it to be validated. This kind of silence builds confidence from the inside out. Because real confidence doesn't shout, it glows. It doesn't justify, it simply exists. It doesn't force anyone to believe. It lets actions speak louder than words ever could. The more you practice silence, the stronger your presence becomes. People start to feel your energy without needing your explanation. They sense your calm, your certainty, your inner strength. And that quiet power becomes magnetic. It draws the right people closer and repels those still living in illusion. Choosing silence is not weakness, it's discipline. It's emotional control in a world that reacts to everything. It's choosing to respond with wisdom instead of impulse. It's saying, I know who I am, and that's enough. The more you lean into this, the more your energy stabilizes. You stop overthinking, stop replaying conversations, stop questioning if you said enough or too little. You rest in the truth that your value doesn't depend on anyone's understanding of it. Every moment you stay silent in peace, You're sending a message louder than any argument could. You're saying, I have evolved. You're showing that you've outgrown the need for external validation. You've learned that silence doesn't need to be explained, because those who are aligned with truth will always feel it. That's when you stop living for reaction and start living for alignment. That's when you realize that your silence isn't emptiness, it's evidence of inner mastery. Every time you explain yourself to someone unwilling to understand, a small part of your energy slips away. It's not just words that you lose, it's focus, clarity, and strength. Energy is life, and where you direct it determines the quality of your reality. Protecting it is not selfish, it's survival. When you stop giving energy to misunderstanding, you begin reclaiming the power you didn't even know you were giving away. You begin to see that peace isn't found through convincing others. It's found in mastering your attention. People trapped in illusion thrive on emotional reaction. They provoke, question, and twist because it feeds their need for control. But when you stay calm, when you stop defending your every choice, their illusion collapses. They can no longer pull you into their chaos because you've learned to guard the doorway of your mind. That's where strength truly lives, not in control over others, but in control over your own energy. Emotional discipline is the art of knowing when to speak and when silence is sacred. Protecting your energy means refusing to attend every battle you're invited to. Not every argument deserves your response, and not every misunderstanding deserves your explanation. You're not here to win people over. You're here to win your peace back. Every time you stay centered instead of reacting, you rise a little higher in consciousness. You begin to feel what true maturity feels like. The power to choose peace, even when chaos surrounds you. Boundaries are born from that awareness. A boundary isn't a wall built from bitterness, it's a gate built from wisdom. It says, I love you, but I won't lose myself trying to make you understand me. It's knowing that love without peace is not love, it's bondage. Protecting your energy means choosing peace, even if it means losing connection. Because not every connection deserves to stay once you've outgrown confusion. When you set boundaries, you stop living in reaction and start living in creation. You stop explaining and start expressing through action. You stop arguing for your worth and start showing it through presence. Boundaries are where self-respect meets self-love. They are silent reminders that your energy is sacred, and not everyone should have access to it. And when people try to cross them, you don't need to fight. You just stay firm. The calmness that follows is worth more than 1,000 explanations. You begin to realize that energy is the real currency of life. Every word, thought, and emotion is either an investment or a loss. When you waste energy explaining yourself to those who cannot hear you, you bankrupt your spirit. But when you protect that energy, you start building emotional wealth, clarity, confidence, and inner freedom. And from that freedom, your life begins to transform. Peace is not something you chase, it's something you protect. The world will always try to pull you back into noise, but the one who has learned to guard their energy will never fall easily again, because they've seen what it costs to over-explain, over-give, and over-prove. They've learned that silence is not distance, it's protection. And protecting your peace doesn't make you hard, it makes you wise. The moment you realize this, your entire energy shifts. You stop bleeding for misunderstanding and start thriving in quiet strength. You will be misunderstood, and that's a truth you must learn to accept without fear. The moment you start walking your path, some will question your motives, others will doubt your intentions, and many will twist your silence into arrogance. But you must remember, being misunderstood is not a sign of failure. It's often a sign that you're growing beyond what small minds can grasp. People who see through illusion challenge the comfort of those who live in it, and when you threaten someone's illusion, they will always choose to defend it rather than face it. That's why explaining yourself to them never works. You're not speaking to truth, you're speaking to fear disguised as certainty. Those who see clearly will never ask you to explain yourself because they can feel your energy before they hear your words. They recognize authenticity in silence. But those trapped in illusion are addicted to misunderstanding because confusion gives them a sense of control. They feed off conflict, they twist peace into pride, and they mistake boundaries for rejection. Yet even in their blindness, you must not lower your vibration to match theirs. You cannot fight illusion with anger, you can only dissolve it through awareness. Every great soul in history has walked through the fire of being misunderstood. Every visionary has been judged before being celebrated. Every truth seeker has been mocked before being respected. And in each of those moments, silence was their shield. They didn't fight to be understood. They let time reveal the truth. Because truth doesn't need to shout, it simply stands and waits. What others fail to see now, life will one day make visible. The only thing that matters is that you keep walking your path with calm conviction. Misunderstanding is often life's way of testing how much you've grown. Will you shrink back into explanation? Or will you rise into alignment? Will you trade your peace for their approval? Or will you choose stillness over chaos? These moments define you. They shape your spiritual strength and emotional maturity. Each time you stay silent instead of reacting, you prove to yourself that your energy belongs to you, not to their illusion. You learn that the real battle is never with others. It's between your old self that needed to be understood, and your higher self that no longer does. Let them misinterpret you. Let them talk. Let them assume. The ones meant to walk beside you will never need an explanation. They will simply understand. Their souls will recognize yours. And the rest? They were never meant to see your light until they've faced their own darkness. You don't need to defend what time and truth will eventually reveal. The higher you rise, the thinner the air becomes, and fewer people will be able to breathe where you're going. That's not loneliness. It's evolution. Elevation always brings isolation before recognition. It's a sacred cleansing that removes noise from your path and prepares you for the clarity that comes next. So don't resist it. Embrace it. Because when you stop trying to be understood by everyone, you begin to understand yourself completely. You start living from truth, not perception. You stop needing to explain, and instead you start to embody peace. And that peace, calm, steady, unshakable, will always speak louder than any words could. There comes a point where you stop craving to be seen and start craving to be free. You no longer care who understands you, because your peace has become more valuable than their perception. That's when true clarity begins to bloom. It's quiet, steady, and untouchable. You realize that life isn't about proving your truth to anyone. It's about living it so deeply that explanation becomes unnecessary. You no longer move from reaction, you move from awareness. You no longer seek to be understood, you seek to remain in alignment with who you are. This is what it means to live beyond illusion. You've spent years trying to make others see your light, forgetting that light doesn't need to convince darkness, it simply shines. And the moment you stop explaining yourself, you step into that light fully. You become unshakable, because your peace no longer depends on how anyone else perceives you. Their confusion no longer disturbs your balance. Their doubt no longer threatens your direction. You begin to see that silence isn't the absence of strength, it's the confirmation of mastery. Inner clarity is the highest form of freedom. It means that your emotions, your confidence, your purpose, all of it, come from within. It means that even when the world questions your choices, you remain at peace because you know your truth. You know why you started, what you believe, and who you're becoming. That kind of self-assurance is rare in a world obsessed with external validation, but it's the foundation of every awakened soul, the ability to walk away from misunderstanding without carrying resentment. When you reach this level of awareness, everything begins to shift. The energy you once wasted on explanations becomes power for creation. The time you once spent defending yourself turns into time spent building yourself. You no longer chase understanding, you attract it. You no longer explain your worth, you embody it. And those who are meant to understand you will feel your truth without a single word. They will see it in your calmness, your consistency, your quiet confidence. That's the power of inner clarity. It speaks in silence. The beauty of reaching this state is that it changes how you experience life. Conflict no longer consumes you. Judgment no longer defines you. You begin to walk through life with a sense of grace that cannot be faked. You smile where you once would have argued. You let go where you once would have held on. You forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. You stop reacting to illusion and start responding to truth. And that shift transforms everything. Living beyond illusion means you no longer need to be understood to feel seen. You understand yourself deeply enough to know that peace doesn't come from validation. It comes from alignment. And when you live in alignment, nothing external can shake your internal world. You start leading with energy, not explanation. You move with quiet confidence, not loud defense. You attract peace because you become peace. This is the freedom of the awakened mind, the ability to walk through misunderstanding without losing yourself, to choose peace over pride, clarity over chaos, silence over noise, because the ones who are meant to walk beside you will feel your truth without words, and those who can't see it were never meant to guide your path. Your journey is yours to live, not to explain, and when you finally accept that, you stop surviving in illusion and start living in truth. The moment you stop explaining yourself, you begin to feel a different kind of peace, one that doesn't depend on approval, one that doesn't fade when misunderstood. It's the peace that comes from complete alignment with your truth. You no longer need to justify who you are because you finally know who you are. You no longer chase understanding from others because you've built it within yourself. That's the real victory, when your validation comes from your own clarity, not their confusion. This inner clarity becomes your compass. It guides your choices, your emotions, your direction. You start living with intentional energy instead of scattered reaction. You no longer beg to be seen, you choose to be still. You no longer over-explain, you move with quiet certainty. You no longer seek acceptance, you embody authenticity. This is how transformation unfolds, not through noise but through stillness. You begin to see that silence was never emptiness, it was the space where your real self waited to be heard. You become untouchable in ways the world cannot understand. Because no matter what is said, no matter what is assumed, your peace remains unmoved. You start living from an inner world that no external illusion can reach. You stop trying to convince others of your worth and start living in a way that proves it naturally. You stop forcing understanding and start allowing alignment. And as you do, everything that isn't true to your soul starts to fall away. People who thrived on misunderstanding you drift out of your life, and those who vibrate with truth begin to find their way in. You don't chase anymore. You attract by existing in peace. This is the real essence of freedom, to live without defending your existence, to walk through life knowing that your peace is yours, no matter what storm others bring. The illusions that once held you captive lose all meaning because they can no longer control your energy. You become the observer, no longer pulled into emotional chaos, no longer addicted to being understood. You see through illusion and respond with awareness. That is what awakening feels like. The strength to remain calm in misunderstanding, the grace to stay kind in distortion, the wisdom to let go without resentment. When you reach this state, you realize that life was never asking you to be understood by everyone. It was asking you to understand yourself deeply enough that no misunderstanding could shake you. You stop living from defense and start living from depth. You become light, calm, steady, and undeniable. You no longer shout your truth, you radiate it. You no longer chase validation, you embody self-respect. You no longer explain your path, you walk it, silently, powerfully, and without hesitation. And as your silence deepens, something profound begins to happen. You begin to attract only what matches your peace. You begin to live in a reality where energy speaks louder than words, where alignment replaces approval, and where truth no longer needs to be spoken to be felt. You become the proof of everything you once tried to explain. That is the ultimate transformation. Not to be understood by the world, but to finally understand yourself so deeply that you no longer need the world's understanding at all.